Alright, hello everyone. Today we're going to record a Dash vs Guardian game. So we're trying out some of the new cards from Crucible of War just to see how they sort of play out. Um, so these decks are pretty new. We haven't sort of extensively tested them. It's our first Dash vs Guardian matchup. So I'll just start off by showing my sideboard. So as you can see, the equipment that comes out just because I've gone for quite an aggressive strategy this game. So things like the Iron Rot Gauntlet, the Iron Rot Legs, I'm not too worried about. The Visiatronic model that's just in there for Wizard, as is the 8th, I think. So one kind of interesting thing that I wanted to try is I've actually cut all the defense reactions against Guardian. So I'm playing much more of an aggressive dash strategy, even more so than the old mid-range decks. So we'll see how that works out. I may just get crushed, but I've got to have some fun with it. I've also taken out one red throttle, one yellow throttle, just because I want to throw in a lot of small go-again attacks. So if I throttle and my opponent can block with 2 cards to 6, that's not as efficient as I'd like. The induction chamber I've taken out. I'm not sure if that's correct, but I wanted to try a build with 2 chambers and 2 plasma purifiers, the new mech item. The reason for that is I feel if I'm going very aggressive, I may not have the resources to constantly be using sort of 3 chambers and plasma purifiers. Finally, I've taken out Command and Conquer because against Guardian, they're basically always going to have cards that block for 3. And even if I use it with Goliath Gauntlet, they usually just save either the Crater Fist or the Tectonic Plating. So they save a big 2 block for that. So if I attack for 8 with Command and Conquer with Goliath Gauntlet, it's probably just going to get blocked out. So it isn't as strong as I'd like. And finally, I've taken out one blue Polar Mold because I feel with cutting the throttles, cutting 1 chamber, I can probably get away with just 1 less blue. But anyway, this should be a bit of fun. So I've won the dice roll and chose to go first. You pretty much always want to do that on Dash because you can get out an early item. And I don't want to get crushed on turn 1. So we'll shuffle up and see how it goes. So this game is just going to be from my perspective from Dash, and I'll be trying to give a bit of commentary and insight as I go through. Okay, so not the ideal first hand. What I'm probably going to do here is just pitch away all my blue cards just to filter through my deck and put counters on the gun in the chamber and set up the high octane and hopefully get that off next turn. So I could attack for 2 with go again, but I don't want to let him get a free mulligan on one hand. So I'm just going to pitch, counter, counter. Now, if you do have extra resources, you can use them to attempt to put a counter on the gun. It won't put an additional counter on it, but it also you're also allowed to do it just to filter your hand. Also, I think there was a slight miscommunication. He thought I was going to attack with a weapon. Okay, so we've potentially got a strong turn lined up. Again, playing against Guardian with no defense reacts is pretty scary. And we see a disable come down. Now with the new card Mangle in Guardian, that actually the crush effect, it destroys an item with a counter on it, a -1 counter on it. Um, so potentially, even thinking about it just now, I may have been better off with the Iron Rock Gauntlet to protect against that. I don't want to get disabled on turn 1 here, so I'm probably just going to give up the counter. And as much as I love High Octane, because I've already got one in Arsenal, I may block with that and try to set up a good turn with the high speed impact and Spark of Genius. So we're going to go ahead and block for 4 here and take 3. So what we're really hoping here is that we draw a good card off the high octane and that the boost doesn't miss. Which, since my whole deck apart from tomes, it's mech cards, we should be looking okay. Okay, so I'm going to pitch a yellow zipper hit to high octane. Okay, and that's definitely not what we wanted to see. But we'll make it work. Okay, so we're going to high speed octane with boost. So boost hits, so we get 2 action points. So this would give my next boost attack dominate, probably not super relevant here. So we're going to use an action point to Spark of Genius. So we're kind of hoping for a yellow or a blue card to draw off the Spark, because I wouldn't mind actually dropping down the Plasma Purifier. So that's the power of Spark here. Because I have a spare action point and I've boosted, I'll get to draw a card. Okay, well, we do have a few options here. I think ultimately what is correct is, because the Plasma Purifier, I'm not certain it's going to help me enough early, and because I don't have defense reactions, I want to keep going aggressive. So what I'm actually going to do here is just use up all my resources and potentially spark up a second Teklo to see what I can do. And I'm just trying to consider if that's getting a bit too greedy. Because we get the second Teklo, we've got a huge turn next turn, but we do risk getting hit by sort of a Dominator's Final Crush. So it's a bit of an interesting one. Okay, I think first we're just going to attack for 2 with Go again. Then we're going to we're just going to play it safe and play the Purifier. So the reason I didn't play the Spark and Arsenal this is because the card draw would be wasted from the Spark of Genius. So doing it this way, we get around things like Command and Conquer or Disable, and we still set up a pretty good turn. Okay, and we see the 1 of Tech card, which is probably going to be blocking this turn. And it probably worked out quite well we didn't get the second Teklo core there, because the risk of that, as we can see here, is you end up with too many resources to play with. So it's always a good idea to count the resources to see if we can use them all. So if I block with 1 card, we're going to have 1, 2, 5, 8 and play this. So we can go 3 counters, shoot 3 counters. So I think ultimately it's probably worth just saving the damage here. So we're just going to block up for 6. Okay, so the Teklo core gives us 2 resources. So we're just going to go counter on the gun, counter on the purifier. And we're going to pitch and put a counter on the chamber. So just showing you what the new card does. Okay, so we're going to shoot for 2 with go again. So here it's worth just thinking if we want to actually use the purifier to get 1 extra damage. I actually think it's not here, purely because we just want to, it's only getting 1 damage, and instead we can go counter on gun, counter on chamber, and play the Teklo core. So we're just going to do that instead. We'll put a counter on the gun, counter on the chamber, play the second Teklo core. And pass it back. So this is a pretty scary turn coming up. The big risk in doing a play like this is that if we get hit by a Spinal Crush with Dominate, it's really, really bad. Because all our Teklo resources are going to go to waste. So it looks like he's got the Mangle. Now the issue is here. So he's got no resources up. The issue is here, if we block with the Teklo Foundry Heart and he pummels, that's really bad for us. So what I'm actually considering here is just taking the damage. We'll lose the Skull Cap, but we've already got 1 block out of it anyway. If he pummels, it uses up his Arsenal card. We'll take a lot of damage, but we can hit back for a bit with 2 Teklos. So we're actually not going to block here. And he did have the pummel, so that is probably quite a good thing. Okay, so sorry, just to clarify there, the Teklo Foundry Heart wouldn't have actually been destroyed, because it only gets the counter when the combat chain closes. So, but we're going to take 12 damage. Oops. Actually, I think I messed up the life. Okay, sorry, I got distracted for a second there. Okay, so then we have to discard a locked and loaded. And our Skull Cap gets destroyed. Okay, so we're going to start off with 4 resources from the Teklo cores. This time we will use the Purifier. I'm going to shoot for 3 with Guardian. Ah yeah, so he took 3. Now we want to load up the chambers just in case we miss a boost, so we're going to do that here. And go counter, 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 using 3 resources. Then we're going to pitch up to 4. And throttle with boost. Okay, now there's 2 plays here. We can either attack with the 0 to 60, or we can just attack for a 3 and arsenal to 0. I think what I will do here is just attack for 3, because then next turn we've got the Teklo core coming up. We've got a 0 to 60 to start the turn off with. And we're hoping we won't get too punished from a 3-card hand. So unfortunately we didn't get to efficiently use all our resources. Ooh, sorry, card's going flying. But we have managed to close that gap somewhat. Now unfortunately that's a card we really didn't want to see, because that's effectively going to shut down our turn. So got a little bit punished not paying 0 to 60 there, as we would have got an extra 3 damage in. So it's not worth blocking with the Foundry Hut, as we're going to get crushed anyway. So we're just going to block for 3 and take 5. And again, our Teklo core gets a bit wasted, so unfortunately, potentially even looking at this now, the second Teklo core would have been worth just using for resources, but we'll make do with what we've got. So at least here we are able to play a red throttle. We can't gain go again because of Spinal Crush, but this is something at least. I'm probably going to hold on to the zipper hit to try set something up next turn. So we're just going to throttle for 6. So our opponent may just be having a bit of fun with us there, or maybe he forgot. So my opponent, by the way, is Karol, my co-host on the Session Blood podcast. Okay, so we got through 3 damage, and we'll see what he's got lined up for next turn. Okay, we see an attack for 6 here. Now, this is a turn where we want to think ahead and think, what can we do next turn? I'd like to try set up the Tome of Findale, but in order to do so, we're going to have to pressure quite a lot of damage, and I don't think we want to take 6 here. But what we may do actually, we may just go for that tome play. So if we block with the Spark of Genius here, that allows us to pitch a blue card, attack multiple times with a pistol, and use zipper hit, and use 0 to 60. So we'll do this and hope we can put enough pressure on. Okay. So we're going to start off with the pistol. So we're going to shoot for 3 with go again. And then use the purifier. Okay, actually, so that was... I can't actually use that as a attack reaction. Sorry, we're sort of first time playing some of these cards as well. Yeah, so you do have to use that in advance. So when I was trying to be tricky before, that's not actually allowed. Okay, so we've got through damage, and this turn we really need to try put the pressure on to stop him setting up a turn. So if we do that, that might allow us to use Time of Findale next turn from Arsenal to try to get us back in the game. So here I'm actually going to use Zipper Hit first because I want to use the Foundry Hut to really maximize my resources. So I'm going to Zipper Hit for 4 with boost. So fortunately for us, our opponent looks like they've drawn 2 red pummels, so not a great blocking hand for them. Okay, so now we're going to 0 to 60 with boost. Now we're going to use the final resource for Teklo Foundry Hut. So we want our next time turn to be just as big as possible if we can get it off. So we're gonna burn through a few cards here just to set up for next turn. Okay, so we did lose the red Zipper Hit, that's a little painful. But we do get 2 resources, which allows us to put a counter on the pistol and we're just going to put a counter on the purifier and hope we get lucky and hit the high octane next turn. And then we'll shoot for 3. Okay, so we've managed to even up the life totals here. We'll see what our opponent's got. So they do have that surge. So again, we're just really not wanting to see a Spinal Crush here. That would be painful. Okay, so we're a bit lucky and our opponent's only attack for 4. So generally with high octane, Time of Findale turns, it's best if you can get it off with high octane to use those action points. Because my deck is so mech heavy, what I'm going to do is just basically commit and use the Achilles accelerator to get off Tome. So I'm just going to take this damage here. So what we're hoping here is we 0 to 60 with boost and don't hit one of the tomes left in the deck. Then we use the Achilles to go up to 2 action points, use the tome, and try and really put the pressure on this turn. So I think just for a bit of insurance, we're going to pitch, because we need resources for time anyway, and put a counter on the gun, just in case it goes wrong. And we'll 0 to 60 with boost for 3. Then we're going to use the Achilles accelerator. Now this is a bit risky because this is our insurance plan if we miss a boost, but if we're not running defense reactions, we need to put the pressure on this turn. So we're going to use the Achilles to get an extra action point, use an action point and a resource to play a Time of Findale. Again, not ideal. It would have been nice to get some yellow or red boost cards here. We can make this work. It's just, it could have been better. So we're going to use the final resource to put a count on the gun. We're going to use the purifier, and we're going to attack for 3. With go again. So we're doing a bit of shortcuts on the sequencing. If you're playing across from your opponent, just keep in mind that it's an attack reaction. But my opponent sort of understands that I was going to do that anyway. Okay, so here we've got 2 tomes left on our deck out of 30 cards. So there's about a 1 in 15 chance we miss boost. So it does pay to be a little bit more careful with our resources. We don't just want to drop a throttle, hit a tome, and end our turn, potentially losing the game. So we're going to pitch to put a counter on the gun. We're going to put a counter on the chamber and a counter on the chamber. Then we're going to pitch. See, now if we miss boost, it's not the end of the world. It's not great, but it's not terrible either. And we're going to throttle with boost for 4. So now we're pretty much in that same position we were last time when I chose the Arsenal 0 to 60. In this situation, I'm definitely going to play it. We've got an 8 life lead here. If my opponent chooses to take the 0 to 60 and the gun hit, they go down to 3 life, which is pretty hard to come back from against Dash. And if they choose to block out cards here, it makes their next turn much less scary. So the reward is definitely worth it. So we're going to play a 0 to 60 for 3, and we're going to boost it. And one thing always keep in mind is the amount of equipment armor left. So my opponent looks like they're on 6 life, but effectively they're on 12 right now because of these. So they're probably feeling a little bit safer. So while this is probably looking quite good, you know, they're on 3, we're on 17. They do have a lot of equipment block left, and you know, a big dominate attack could really sort of turn the tides here. But we did what we set out to do. We gained some life, we got a lot of damage through, and we got at least 1 card out of the opponent's hand. So we're going to hope we don't see like a crippling crush. It's probably going to be a crippling crush. It's a crippling crush. So I think one tip when you're facing down an attack like this is it's actually worth considering whether you want to block it at all or just let all the damage through. So because this is 11 with dominate, if I block with, say, 1 card here, if I block with, say, the throttle, and randomly discard the tome and the pedal to the metal, I'm still taking 8 damage going to 9, but I don't really have much of a turn. Whereas if I just take all the damage, I go down to 6. Again, a little bit risky against this type of deck, but if I go down to 6, there's a lot of 2-card combinations that I'm pretty happy to keep here. I mean, ideally we want the blue in the 0 to 60. Worst case scenario would be probably something like Tome of Farndale and Throttle. But what we're going to do is we're just going to take the damage and see if we can pressure our opponent enough next turn. Okay, so see this sort of hand, that's not too bad. We should be able to attack multiple times. So the idea is what we want to do here is attack first with the pistol, but leave one resource up to make sure we can use Teklo Foundry with the 0 to 60. So it's important not to get caught out by that if you are going to need the extra resources. So now at this point there's only one Tome of Findar left in the deck, so we're feeling pretty confident that Teklo Foundry and Boost is going to get through. So we're going to pitch to put a counter on the gun. Use the Plasma Purifier. I'm going to shoot for 3 with Go Again. Okay, so we've got through for 1. And also, a good thing to keep in mind as well is using these effectively. So I had a couple opportunities to use it this game, which I didn't. So we'll see if that comes back to punish me. Okay, so my opponent's blocked out that. So we're going to follow up with a 0 to 60 with Boost. So now we see the power of the equipment coming through. Now bear in mind, when I put an extra counter on the gun or use the Foundry Heart here, it's going to reset the combat chain, so he will be able to block with these again. So we got up to 2 resources here. We're going to put a counter on the gun and a counter. We're going to put a counter on the chamber this time, and we're going to shoot for 3. Okay, so we managed to get a few cards out of our opponent's hands, so we're probably not going to get hit with the Dominate attack. What we're looking to do next turn is to potentially block up with the Foundry Heart and round out this game. Now, unfortunately, this really isn't the hand we wanted to try to do this. So we've got a chamber here which we can't really afford to play. The tome isn't great for us either. So this might... Okay, sorry people, just one minute. Sorry, I just had a call come through on my phone. Okay, so we need to figure out how we can get some cards out of the opponent's hand here. The problem is if we drop down to 3 to try to turn the skull cap off, or to 2, sorry, that may not ultimately work how we want it to. And we really need to get at least 2 cards out of our opponent's hand this turn. So what we're going to do is we're going to block for 2 here and see if this works. Okay, this wasn't ideal, but because we're really under the pump trying to push damage through, we might have to use the Goliath Gauntlet on a blue pedal to the metal. So we'll just try and figure out the best sequencing for this, because we need Ideally, we've got 4 resources. Ideally, we can go up to 5 with the Teklo Heart. So we want to be able to attack twice with the gun. And we're going to try force out a block on the pedal to the middle, which gives my next attack dominate. So we're going to hold back the gun as a bit of a bluff. Oh, actually, one thing to keep in mind is the sequencing, because we don't want to reset the combat chain and let him get double blocks out of his equipment. So, in saying that, we're actually going to do this the other way around. So we're going to put a counter on the gun, use a Goliath Gauntlet, and pedal to the middle for 5. So hopefully we can try and make our opponent think here. So the goal is to get 2 cards out of their hand, at least. Maybe get some equipment blocks, and see if we can finish them off. Okay, so we've got 1 card into equipment. Now, unfortunately for us, our opponent is on 3. So what we're going to do here is use the Teklo. To get 2 resources. So this is quite important because we need to be able to attack twice for 3 to get 1 card out of our opponent's hand. So we're going to put a counter on the Purifier, use it to pump up the gun, then we're going to attack for 3 with Go again. Then we're going to put a counter on the gun with our last resource and shoot for 3. Okay, so they got the Sigil of Solace, but again, this for a hand that wasn't that good, I feel like we got the best we could out of it. So now our opponent's down to 2 cards in hand. We've got rid of most of the equipment. They're still on 3 life. And this is the kind of hand we want to try to finish them off. So this is where they don't have anything like Pummel that's going to kill us. So in this situation, we just need to figure out how we get the maximum damage. I mean, honestly, ideally one of these would have been a blue card. What we're going to try to do here is get off a turn where we go pitch the Zipper hit, play a Zipper hit. So we've got 2 resources from Zipper. Ideally we get 1 more from the Teklo Foundry, so we're playing with 3 resources. We can go Zipper hit, 0 to 60, attack for 2. And if that doesn't kill the opponent, hopefully it takes out their whole hand. So we're going to take a bit of a risk and go down to 2. So if our plan doesn't work, we're in crush range, and we may lose. But sometimes that's a risk you got to take. Now, the scary thing is here is I believe we have one more tome left in the deck. So when I used that Achilles earlier to try pull it off, yeah, we do. So we've got 2 tomes here, we've got 1 left in the deck. And this is a very finely balanced turn. If we do hit the tome, we're in big trouble. So we have pitched a few cards as well, so at this point we're thinking it's actually a good chance it's somewhere in the top 3 or 4 cards. No, because I've kind of committed to that plan of action, we might just go through with it and hope it works. One thing as well is if we strip our opponent's whole hand here because we don't have down the second chamber, it actually makes it difficult for us to kill them outright. But we'll see what we can do. Oh, that's unfortunate. Okay, so we've got out 1 card from their hand, so we'll use the Foundry Heart. Use 1 resource to put a count on the gun in case it all goes wrong. And we'll zip a hit with boost. So we've got our opponent down to 2 here. So what I may actually do is save the 0 to 60 to try and kill them next turn. Because if we 0 to 60 with boost here, they block with 1 card, they then block with the pistol. But I'm not actually sure if we will have enough to strip their entire hands. If we do it the other way around and we attack for 2, we're going to get 1 card out of their hands. They pitch and attack us back for 4, ideally, and we can block with 1 card and try kill them with 3 cards plus 0 to 60. So it's a bit of a trade-off. I think because I've played this so aggressively, that might be what we have to do here. So we're just going to attack for 2. Like I say, if we had a blue card there, we probably could have closed out that game. But unfortunately, we did not. Okay, so our opponent had that, which is pretty bad for us. So now they're going to go up to 4 life. And now we have to think. So it's going to take 2 cards out of our hand. That's coming in for 8, I believe. So we're going to block for 7 and go down to 1. Now, if we didn't have the tome left in our deck, I'd probably be feeling okay. but because we do, I have a bad feeling we're going to hit that tome and lose this game. So we really have to figure out how we can strip through our opponent's cards. The problem is as well, we've got multiple items left in the deck. So we can't really rely on the Foundry Hut for the resources because of that tome. So we need to make sure we sequence this correctly. We'll pitch and put a counter on the gun, and then so I've got 2 resources up. And again, we really have to be aware of how many cards we've got left in the library here. Right, because we can only, attacking twice with a gun for 3 plus 0 to 60 isn't going to be enough damage. So what we're going to do here is actually probably play our zipper hit or 0 to 60 without boost. So our opponent's gone down to 2. We're going to zipper hit with boost. And we'll 0 to 60 with no boost. So ultimately it may have been worth going for that extra card because now we're going to have to block with 2 cards and a weapon, which is not great. So it's going to be, at this point, very hard to win this game. So this is probably a good example of why it's good to prioritize getting down that second chamber quite early. If we had the second chamber here, we'd be able to close out this game. Without it, it's very difficult. So we'll pitch to put counters on all 3 and shoot with go again. And actually it's probably a bit of a waste here, it's just if they have a pummel. And then we'll just count up all 3 again and shoot for 3. So yeah, unfortunately for us, we can no longer really win this game. but we'll play it out anyway. So we'll pitch and put a count on the gun, and we'll shoot the 2 with go again. And then, our opponent's probably going to kill us with Crush, but our only chance of winning is playing the second chamber here, since we're all out of cards. It looks like they're going to gain some life. So something to look back on this game is turns that we could have played better. So the turn where I put out the 2 Teklo cores was not ideal. We did set ourselves up a window to win the game, but unfortunately we did draw the 3 red cards, which didn't allow us to close it out. But it was interesting playing against Guardian without the defense reactions. I actually think it wasn't too terrible. But I do think if we're going to play this sort of strategy, we may actually need the 3rd induction chamber in, and we may need to prioritize getting the 2nd chamber out earlier. Particularly in the late game, we saw how difficult it was to actually push through the remainder of the damage without these. If we have 2 chambers going each turn, that really lets us set up turns where with just 2 blue cards, we're stripping multiple cards from the opponent's hand. With just the 1 and the Purifier, it's pretty difficult to do. Okay, so we'll just have a look at my opponent's sideboard before we stop this. We'll see what they took out. So interestingly, they took out the Forge for War. I suppose Forge for War at the moment, unless you have the Goliath Gauntlets and the Mage Master Boots, it's not as strong. So Forge for War, it's really good with Goliath Gauntlet and Mage Master because they don't have Battle Worn. So that allows you then to block multiple gun hits every turn, because putting a counter on the gun resets the combat chain. Not surprising to see the defense reactions taken out here. Against Dash without any on-hit effects, defense reactions aren't particularly important. So we saw our opponent take out a Time Stamp Potion. Interesting. I'm not sure how many times they're running in their deck. More defense reactions, and then just some less aggressive. Or they took out some equipment, which wouldn't be great against us. So we saw the tome really come through for our opponent late game there. But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you found that useful, and yeah, we'll look to get out more of these matchups soon.